Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? That's the first question. I think probably we're ready to go. Let me see if I can get that volume any better. To the first Allan Wall's photography live stream chat thing. Maybe the last. Don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. It's been an absolute mess getting this set up. For one thing, Nikon cameras apparently don't work as webcams. Don't know why, but none of the capture cards work with them. And they have gone the way of all the toilet paper in the world. I don't know what people are doing with toilet paper and webcams, but I'm not sure I want to be a part of that. Anyway, before we get started, and I see I'm not going to be able to keep up with all of these messages. Sure, I will. Plenty of people have got in touch with me because they had to work today. I thought when this was announced, it would be a national holiday, but apparently not. Yes, when folk have got in touch with me because they have to work, they've left me questions, and I've got bunches of really good questions. But we're going to prioritize the live part first, seeing as you've managed to join the feed. So I apologize if the picture's lousy. I'm using the built-in video thingamajig. I did find a way to rig up a good microphone though, so at least the sound should be okay. All right, it looks like great, fantastic. It's tremendous. When I set this thing up, I thought that we'd actually be talking, but apparently that's not the way it works. But I'll imagine your accents. So this is really whatever you want it to be. You can ask anything you want. If I don't know the answer, I'll either tell you I don't know or I'll make something up. But I'll blush if I make something up, so you'll know. Let's see. Let me tell you what happened day before yesterday, before we begin. I was trying to figure out how to do this live stream, so I got onto YouTube and I set everything up, and I was doing a practice, just trying to get all the bits working together. And after about half an hour of swearing at the system because I couldn't get the microphone to work, my computer dinged, and somebody had sent me $1, a tip. And I thought, oh my God, is this thing live? And it was. The whole thing was live. Thank goodness I'd put on a t-shirt before I started. But anyway, yeah, hopefully this won't be that embarrassing. Let's see. Richard Lewis, hi. Allan, have you ever bought a photographic accessory and then regretted it? Yeah, quite a lot. Most of the accessories that I bought that I end up not using, that's my fault, because I thought I would have more use for it than I ended up having. But specific piece of gear, can't think of one right. Well, you know, I bought a ring flash, an on-camera TTL ring flash that never satisfied me at all. Gosh, I can't remember who made it either. It was one of the more expensive non-name brand. Well, I think it might have been Sigma actually. And have I ever bought an accessory that I found extremely useful? Oh my goodness, yes. Just about all the stuff that I buy, I research before I buy it. And yeah, there are so many accessories that I have that have just been invaluable. So So yeah, that's a chap who wanted to know if he could have one of my macro flash diffusers. Unfortunately, I gave them all away. I shouldn't have said, if you want one, just get in touch, because lots of people got in touch and wanted one, so they all disappeared. But I have designed a second version of it that's much better. It's lighter and it has a larger diffusion area. And I'm building prototypes right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sell those this time so that I can afford to buy more of the materials. I've been asking about camera straps and wrist straps made with the cord stuff that I do, and I'm prototyping them as well. So yeah, just check in on the wrist strap page in a couple of weeks, and they'll both be there. Joker, cheers from Canada. Where's Canada? That's north of here, I think. Gene is on. Hey, Gene. Gene is working on a superb project that we were talking about this morning. It's she's shooting white flowers against a white background, and wants to get some help with the color balance and creating a blend that allows the flower to bleed into the background. And it was such an interesting question, and her photographs are so beautiful of orchids that I'm trying to get her to shoot some more of these and send them to me raw, and then I'll have a video on how to do this high key background blending, because it's a more advanced Photoshop technique, but hopefully that will be coming out fairly soon. Marcelo, what is your primary source? Oh, what do I make money doing? That's a good question, Marcelo. Right now, I don't have one. It was teaching photography, but this whole project of the YouTube channel and the some of the charity work I'm doing now has really left me with no time to teach. So I'm not making any revenue. I've thrown in my all my efforts into this, and with the hopes that at some point in the future this might generate some revenue, because I'd rather do this than anything else. Christopher, is there a good way to determine how far to move a focusing rail when photographing a bug with focus stacking? Yes, there is. In order to calculate the ideal focus step length when you're doing focus stacking, you need to know a lot about your system. For example, you need to know what f-stop, if you're using a lens, a regular camera lens or an enlarger lens, it's fairly straightforward to calculate. Basically what you do is there's a formula that you plug the numbers into, but if you know what your effective aperture is and you know the magnification you're working with, then you can very easily calculate the distance between layers, and then usually I reduce that in half, so I've got lots of overlap. The formula is 2 times the circular vision is approximately 0.023. So it's 2 times that number times the actual effective aperture of your system. And your effective aperture of your system is affected by the magnification. So if you're shooting at, say, 4x, but your lens is at f8, but it is on the end of extension tubes to get that magnification, then your actual aperture is not f8. It's f8 times the magnification plus 1. So it's actually f40. And you need to know that number in order to calculate the length. Somebody got in touch with me yesterday and asked this same question, and it is a long answer because it involves mathematics. So much so that for most people, it's not a bad idea. I've been talking about and using, and you have it on 160 millimeters of extension. That comes out to about, I think, 140 microns is the ideal step size. So that's a place to start and trial and error from there. Let me see. Your mic was dead when I got on. Is it still dead? I hope not. The little green light's flickering. So tell me if we've lost the volume for any reason, please, and I'll go back to just using the computer. Let me see. Jim, can you recommend microscope objectives in 10x CFI plan lenses? They come in 10, 20, and 40. I don't have the 40. I have a different make of the 40X, but the 10X is probably the single best microscope objective on the market. And I just bought a second one from the company that distributes them in the US for $250. They regularly show up on eBay for about $199, $200. I thought it wasn't worth getting a used one if I could get a new one for basically the same price. So it's the CFI Plan 10X Nikon. It's the one with the gold body. It does not say Eclipse or E or any of those other designations. It's just the CFI Plan. I'll take a picture of it and I'll post it. I'm doing a video actually on 10x infinity objectives. You need to use a second lens to use the 10x objective because it's already infinity corrected. So we need another lens between the objective and the camera. And I'll explain all of that in the video. But you cannot go wrong, Jim, with morning from New Zealand. Is it tomorrow morning? It's not this morning, is it? I suppose I should have said something about that when I announced the program, that it's actually a different day if you're in Australia. Well, nice to see you, Dave, from yesterday. Anyhow, David Tyler, when shooting with Bellows and microscope objective, how do you know what the aperture is and how do you determine the length of the bellows? Okay, well, it will depend on what kind of objective. For most finite objectives, and it'll say this on the objective, 160 millimeters. That's the length of the microscope tube that the objective is used on. What that means is that in a finite objective, if the objective is 160 millimeters exactly from your sensor, then at that distance, the image will be to get softening and all kinds of other issues as the subject is basically being dragged into front focusing or back focusing. So it has to be 160. But that's not 160 for your bellows or the side. And that shows you where the sensor plane is. And you measure from that to your objective and set the, another way to do it is just to find out the flange distance of your camera. For Nikon, it's 46 millimeters. That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. So you take the 46 millimeters. So some of the adapters, if you're using step up or step down rings, may add a couple of millimeters of length, and that also needs to be subtracted from the bellows length. Totally different if you're using a finite objective because you're going to have a lens. Now, I use Raynox lenses that are small, like diopters, the kind of lens that you screw on a regular telephoto lens to use it as a macro lens. They're terrible for that, but they're fantastic for creating a lens tube is what it's called. And I use my Bellows for that. So what I'll do is I will mount I'll set my Bellows to the distance specified for the infinity tube, which is, again, a specific number. But then I'll have a Raynox diopter at the front of the Bellows, and then an adapter, and then microscope objective as close as I can to the Raynox. And that whole thing forms the system. But like I say, we're going to do a video on this, and it does get complicated. So, so that's something you can look forward to. Telling you all about the fact that I use cellophane wrapping paper as a replacement for gels on my studio lights and also on my speed lights, just because it's super cheap. You can layer it, and yeah, some of the expensive some of the real gels that are made for photography are just so expensive. But Robbie pointed out that, you know, using cellophane is not really a smart idea, and if you're using modeling lights, it's never a good idea. So yeah, I would probably go with what Robbie said and invest in gels. I don't want anybody to ruin their light because a piece of paper melts, because it will if it gets hot enough. So thanks for pointing that out, Roy. Dave says it's 13 minutes after midnight in Malaysia. Well, move somewhere else, Dave. It's just in the afternoon here. You're welcome over here. All right. Marcelo says the video keeps stalling. Sorry about that. Oh, and Robbie just pointed that out as well. The only thing that I can think of is that my internet connection, which is normally lightning fast, has really been degraded since since everybody's at home. Everybody's working from home. The bandwidth is terrible now. So, well, I'm really sorry. If it's so distracting, then we won't do this again. We'll figure out something else. But yeah, I'm sorry about the buffering. It looks great here. Anyhow, yeah, it's buffering for everyone. Hey, Cosmita. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Does anybody have any suggestions? I'm in the best place for my Wi-Fi, and I don't have any buffering issues coming the other way. Let me see. All right. Yeah, Robbie says everybody is on the web, and yeah, that's a big. You know what is buffering? Messages coming. They're coming through slowly. All right, Stephen, good to see you. Well, not, but at least you're getting a good picture where you are. Can I turn down the quality of my video? I thought that we were probably already at rock bottom quality, but I'm not exactly sure where you would do that. You don't want me to try to figure that out. There's no clearly obvious. Oh, you mean try going to like 720 or something? I'm not sure if I can do that in the middle of a stream. Okay, I'll work on it later. I think that as soon as I start trying to on the fly change the settings of this thing, we'll be done. Hey, Stuart, thanks for joining. Allan, will the video be available to view afterwards without the buffering problem? I think so. I was going to set up a camera and just film this and record it so that I could put up a better quality version, but I didn't get around to it. So anyhow, I'm going to pretend that you can hear me, and we'll figure out a way to get through it. Yeah, Barry Selke just pointed out that it's buffering for him too, but I can repost it, and I'm planning to do that. YouTube records these things, presumably takes care of the buffering, and then records them, puts them up. So I'll put it up as a regular video. Let's get back to the questions. Al Popple, who has to work, asked me a question about whether or not to use mirror up mode in focus stacking. And I absolutely recommend that you do that. It involves a little bit of extra setup for your camera. What mirror up is, it's a way to shoot in silent mode, but the reason that it's so useful in macro is because the physical act of your DSLR's mirror snapping up out of the way of the shutter and the sensor is quite a violent physical move, and it sets up vibrations in the camera. In mirror up mode, you press the button, the shutter release once, and it raises the mirror. Then you allow a second. I allow 3 seconds because my big camera really has some vibrations, and I like to be sure I'm not going to get that. So after the first shot doesn't cause vibrations. So you just have, if you're using a focusing rail, you need to go into the settings and make sure that you're programming the rail to move, raise the mirror, pause, shoot you'll find that it triggers the flash with both movements, raising the mirror and taking the shot, which is irritating and puts wear on your lights. But if you're using speed lights, it doesn't do that. They'll only fire, if you've got a decent trigger, they'll only fire on the second shot. Terry Wagner has pointed out that if you, not me, you go to your settings and drop the setting to lower it to 360, that will get rid of your buffering. Hover over the screen and click on settings, then select quality, and the buffering will stop. I did not know any of that. I wonder if I can do that. Well, I won't mess with it now, but that's it. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Terry. So hover over your settings and drop the quality to 360. Gene says, my camera will shoot a stack automatically. I've only used it with continuous lighting. Would I need to use a manual focus rail to use speed liking, which for Nikon is called, what is it? It's got a name. It's not focus stacking, but there is a setting that you can put your camera in through the menu that will, depending on the settings you put in, it will move the focal point incrementally and take multiple shots. So it will shoot a whole stack for you. But Gene, that technology is made for focus stacking, like in landscape photography. The increments, even though you can dial them down pretty low, are not anywhere close to as low as you'll get with a focusing rail, which with the Cognosys stack shot, you can get down to moving the rail 1 micron, 1,000th of a millimeter. But with the camera system, it doesn't do anything like that. And there's another problem too. When the camera is shooting a stack, it is changing focus by adjusting the focus rail. The focus ring of your camera. So it is actually moving the elements with respect to one another in the camera, in the lens. The issue with that is it can change the perspective, and it can change the, I'm distracted because somebody just left me a tip. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I had no idea you could do that. Anyhow, yeah, if you're using the focusing ring automatically through the camera, it's going to give you a nice, beautiful, smooth set of shots on a larger scale, like landscape. But the changes in perspective and magnification is called focus breathing, which you get at the closer in shots, is going to make stacking very difficult. It's really not designed for the kind of macro that we do. So I would say, yes, a rail of some kind. Manual is fine. The Manfrotto manual rail, you can probably consistently move it less than 0.5 millimeter with each tweak. And then you're moving the whole camera and the lens, so you don't get the same focus breathing problems. Tom Pickering thinks I should set up a go-to webinar next time. Well, I have no idea what that is, Tom, but I wrote it down, so I'll look it up. I actually get on a conference call over Zoom. I think it's called Zoom, with my brothers every week, and they're spread all over the country, and we don't have any buffering on that platform. But I can't imagine there are 58 of you watching this, and I don't. Oh dear, I missed a question up here. Atta is talking about the question. These are extension tubes that actually have a chip inside that that controls the focus mechanism of the lens that you attach to the front of it. They're quite expensive. I think $300, $400, something like that. But they have the same problem that the automatic built-in focus stacking, at least the one that Nikon has, in that they're stacking by moving the focus ring. And when you're doing it that way, it's just focus stacking. So they are not a bad place to start if you want to give them a try. But for less money, a lot less money, you could buy a top-of-the-line manual focus rail, beautiful enlarger lens, and even a set of Bellows for less than the price of that ring. And you could do some really impressive macro focus stacking. So I'm not a big fan of the thing. I don't own one, though. All right. Let me see. Marcelo's gone back to work. You know, you could just tell your boss that your surgeon told you you had to stay away until 2 o'clock. I'm glad I don't have to work out there right now. I think that my part of the country has been a little lax in following recommendations, and I'm scared to death that it's going to be a nasty surprise when it hits down here. By the way, thank you everybody who has submitted an entry to the My Pandemic photo competition. There are a couple of images, quite a few actually, that blew my socks off. They were so clever and so well shot. I just can't wait to show everybody what was submitted. It's not getting nearly enough exposure out in the world, so you know, it's tough. Even though the platform I have with the guys that follow this channel is awesome, and I'm so glad for you to be there. It's very hard to bring the world asking them to mention it or just to bring it up. Trying to get it published in a couple of online publications as well. But yeah, I don't know how to do any more than I'm doing. But, I really hope this thing takes off. It's a chance for us to show the world that photographers are actually nice people, and we're willing to work hard for something that's good. All right. How do you catch bugs without damaging them so you can photograph them for later? Christopher Moore, what a great question. Would you expect, I actually, this is a lovely photo messenger bag that somebody makes, and I take this out, and it contains everything I need to do my insect catching. I have about 10 of these, which are tiny little Rubbermaid plastic food containers. It contains ethyl acetate, which is it's a chemical that's toxic to insects. It kind of anesthetizes them. More than 10 minutes will die without going into spasms and without changing its shape. But the way I actually, the best way for me to catch ground insects, I just catch with my fingers. But flying insects, if they're on bushes or whatever, I like to actually catch them by putting the lid on right over them. You got to be quick, and that's hard to do. But by far the most effective way is this is another of my inventions. I actually taught myself to sew on a sewing machine to make this. This is my collection net. It's a $3 badminton racket with the handle cut off from Walmart. A piece of mosquito netting that has been sewn together like sewing videos, and for months I was getting people trying to sell me sewing machines and thread and all these things that I didn't need. But at the bottom, using that same tape, they call it tape, I made a ring like so that is very secure, and the mosquito net is wrapped inside that. And then I have a bunch of these kids' plastic test tubes that you can buy them at hobby shops for like 10 for 50 cents. And then this the tube fits snugly. Well, it does. I promise it fits. Oh, I've got it inside out. It it has a correct way. Suction tube fitted on the end of my net, and you can just trot along by a hedgerow and just run this thing lightly over the leaves, and you go 50 feet and you'll have a jar full of insects, most of which I let go, but any that I want to photograph, I just put them in one of those little pots, and you're good to go. So badminton racket, mosquito netting, plastic tubes, and yeah, you've got to have really, really thick skin to go insect hunting with a butterfly net around here. You get a lot of beer cans thrown at you and hateful comments, but yeah, that's the way I do it, and it works. Let me see. Oh, fantastic. People are keeping me up to date with the equipment they're getting for their macro, and some guy in Sandy just told me that his microscope objective arrived, and it's so exciting. I'm really excited when people start to get into this and will build up a set equipment, and every time they are so blown away when they see the difference that a microscope objective makes. I don't use lenses, reversed lenses, extension tubes, and larger lenses, anything. If it's over like 3x magnification, I go with microscope objectives because they are so much sharper, even the cheap ones. Pete McQuaid, hey Pete, was talking about the MJKZZ Quool rail. That's QOOL. That's not how you spell cool. Anyway, he's saying that it was it's $344 including shipping. Now, I mentioned this in another video, but I had talked about focusing rails in a video, and I was pretty dismissive about the MJKZZ because of things people had told me. I hadn't actually used it, so I probably should have just shut up on it. But since then, Dave got in touch with me. He was having trouble setting it up, and we worked together over the internet, doing a video thing like this. And in the process of helping him set that up, I realized what a really good piece of gear it is. It's solid, and the interface is very easy to use, very intuitive, and from what I can tell, really, really good piece of gear. And if you can get that delivered for $344, that is the price. Actually, it's a third of the price of the fully kitted out Cognosys Stack Shock, the long one. But yeah, before I was unsure because I'd read that it could only be operated through a cell phone, and I didn't like the idea of that. But no, when we were using it the other day with Dave, we were using it through a computer interface, and it worked just fine. In fact, it was as easy to use as Cog, have as many features, but most of us don't use a lot of those features, like continuous shooting and so on. Dirk, hey Dirk, you've got the Canon FD bellows for $80. I can't picture that, the Canon FD bellow. Oh, yes, I can. I think I've seen one. That's a solid, well-built piece of kit. And $80 is a deal for any bellows, especially a name brand. Hello, Michael in Germany. Guten Tag. I don't know what that means. I think it's like hello. It probably means get off my live stream. Anyway, you can't see behind the computer like over there, but I have this enormous video camera rail that I've been making, and it's finally starting to come together, but it's been a disaster. That's why I haven't made a video of it. Yeah, I think I'll probably wait for version 2 before I record that. Stephen wants a video of me using my mosquito net. Never gonna happen. That is so never gonna happen. Oh, dearie me. What was the, yeah, Terry, you were mentioning the, I mean, you were talking about what? I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up here. Terry, you had a camera repair specialist do what? I think I missed a thread. Oh, Pete McQuaid asked a really good question. How do you prevent those snake trails, worm trails on your final images? It's a really, really good question, and it's something that bugs everybody who does this kind of photography. If you've done any focus stacking, you have seen these little squiggles that emanate out from the center to the edges of the photograph. What they are little bits of dirt somewhere in your system, usually on the objective or in the objective or in the lens, that each time you photograph it, it leaves just a very faint artifact on the photograph. But as you go through your stack, each time you get a bit closer, that spot gets a little further to the outside, so that by the time you stack 100 of these photographs together, you've got this spot looking like a faint gray worm crawling across the picture. They're terrible. And the only way that you can absolutely prevent them is to thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, clean the objective. And if it is coming from dust inside the lens or inside the objective, you need to get a pro to fix that. Never try to open an objective to fix anything in there. They'll never work again after that. So yeah, it's a problem. They are extremely easy to remove in post, by the way, because they almost always show up in the background. So the background, even though the background is often not uniform, it's usually kind of a gradient depending on how you lit the subject. But if you go into Photoshop and use the spot healing brush or the patch tool, it will get rid of them completely. You just paint over them and it'll use content aware fill to fill the gap that the worm trail was in. So Pete, I hope that helps. I'm going to run back up to the top because I think I missed some questions and I don't want to do that. Thoughts on specular highlights, and are they inevitable, and should you use Photoshop to remove them? To the extent possible, manage specular highlights in camera before you. By that I mean it's all about positioning your lights, light intensity, the way you're the way you have the frame set up. If you don't have specular highlights in your test shots, then you won't have them in your stacked image. So I am somebody that I'll 10 or 15 test shots when I'm setting up a difficult lighting situation. That crane fly I posted with the incredible detail in the eye, that took a long time to get right. And just by moving speed lights back a little bit, or adding a layer of deflection, or putting in a flag, sometimes that's the best way, because often specular highlights are accidental. It's light bouncing off some metallic surface, and using small black cards as flags can help knock that down too. Once you get into post, if it's a real specular highlight, that means that the detail is lost in the whites. Getting detail back out of clipped whites is just about impossible. There isn't any detail there. You can lower the intensity of the specular highlight, but it's not going to give you any detail back. So I usually try to nip that in the bud before I even shoot the stack. And if you end up having the stack that way, one solution might be, depending on which focus stacking program you're using, you could find if one of the images has that area with a less obvious specular highlight, you can just paste that onto your output image to reduce the effect. I hope that explains it. I didn't realize I'd be getting so many cool questions that it's hard to keep up with them. Patrick wishes me super Gretchies from the Netherlands. I don't know what Gretchies are. Greetings, possibly. Hey, Patrick, glad you could join. Asha Hadara has asked, is it better to use a kill jar or to refrigerate bugs? And who else asked me that? Al, also, who couldn't be here today, asked me the same question. So I recommend never using the fridge to terminate your insects. That it destroys them. If you leave them in too short of a time, they'll come out looking really dead and then come to life and fly away, or sting you, or whatever that they're up to. If you leave them in a second too long, they form ice crystals in their compound eyes and in the interior organs and muscles, and then when you thaw them up, they fall apart. This is especially true with spiders. I have a thing about spiders. I really don't like shooting spiders. I don't catch spiders and kill them. I don't know why that is, but they do not survive being frozen. They liquefy. The whole inside becomes liquid. So for me, it's these little jars, these ethyl acetate jars. It gives by far the best results. It gives a natural, relaxed specimen that's easy to position before it starts to lock up in position. So yeah, I don't use the refrigerator much. Hey, Charles from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Is that two different places? Windsor and Ontario? I really need to get a map of Canada. All righty. We already talked about that. Richard, sunny South Wales. I didn't know it was ever sunny in South Wales. I guess it has to be sometimes. Richard, I meant to ask you whereabouts in South Wales are you? Are you in the Cardiff area? I love Wales, one of my favorite places to visit. Ronald Hoppus has a Cam Ranger and has tried it for focus stacking. It changes the focus as it goes. And yeah, Ronald, it's the same deal as using that stacking extension tube that we were talking about, or using the camera's built-in focus stacking capabilities if your camera has it. It just it gets around the fact that for great focus stacking, your camera and lens have to move as a unit, and there isn't anything that does that other than a rail. So yeah, I've heard of people using Cam Ranger, and I would definitely use that if I had a camera that didn't have built-in focus stacking and I wanted to get a landscape with a sharp foreground and a sharp subject and a sharp background. Yeah, I would have no question about using that, but I haven't found a use for it in macro. Let me see. Charles Gaffin wants to know, how do you determine the macro factor, or the magnification ratio, I guess you're talking about, for a given lens and or with an extension tube? There is the best way to accurately calculate that. There isn't a formula for calculating magnification, especially when you're using reversed lenses. And you can get close based on the length of your extension tubes. But what I recommend doing is shooting a ruler, especially if you've got a metal one with very fine increments marked on it. Shoot it, and with it in actual size on your screen, measure it with another ruler, and that will give you precisely what your magnification is for that particular setup, if it's important to you. You know, I really don't think much about it anymore. I mean, I'm more interested in a sharp image with my subject well positioned in the frame, you know, a well organized photograph, than I am of, you know, what the actual magnification is. But I'll put the formula in the show notes for this so that you can refer to it if you want to get a close approximation of what it would be. All right, let me see. So many questions. Stephen Woodburn, what flash power provides the best balance between strength and recycle time when taking macro shots when you're out and about? Do you shoot continuous or single shot primarily? Great question. Absolutely great question. The most important thing about using flash when I'm out in the field shooting insects, especially flying insects in flight, I'll put an image of some of my hoverfly photographs that I like. The most important thing the flash does for you is it freezes the motion. And therefore, because there's an inverse proportionality to the strength of your speed light flash and the duration, meaning the longer the higher the intensity of the flash, the longer. The brighter your flash is, the longer the flash lasts, and you want to avoid that. So out in the field, I use the least amount of flash I can get away with, which, if possible, is going to be 1/128th power. That has a duration of about 1/30,000th of a second, and it will absolutely freeze whatever you have, and it'll allow you to close your aperture down a little bit so you can get more depth of field, and you're going to get plenty of light in, even though the power is set low, because you're close in. So that's how I do flash in the field. You don't have the luxury that you do in the studio. So you need to go with the lowest power you can, and I only ever shoot single shot. I say only ever. You can't use the flash if you're shooting continuous unless you use the high-speed sync of your flash. So I don't find that shooting continuous is worth. I shoot continuous when I'm shooting birds in flight, but not when I'm shooting insects. The other thing is, I don't touch the focus ring on my camera when I'm doing macro. All of my macro focusing is done by moving me in relation to the insect. It just makes it more deliberate. I find that my photography gets worse if I'm spraying and praying. If I'm shooting bunches and bunches of photographs in continuous release just to see if any of them are good, then none of them are any good. But if I take the time and use single shot with that low power flash, I get better pictures. All right. That whole section is about my buffering. Hi, Dr. Taha. Welcome. Let me see. I can't believe it's already 2 o'clock. Well, I think we got most of the oh, here's one I missed from Ed Benville. When using a reverse mounted lens and one of those mechanical focusing rails, does it matter where the focus on the lens is set? No, it doesn't. My workflow would be to position the insect, get my camera on the rail, and then either in live view or looking through the viewfinder, I'll use the focus ring on the camera to try to focus as close to the front part of the insect as I'm interested in, or flower. But it doesn't really matter because your focus is arbitrary where you start it. If you can construct your stack properly, you're going to be going all the way through the insect, and you'll be picking up focus by the movement of the camera. So the problem is, if you frame your insect and then are so far out of focus that the movement of your rail and camera never even intersects with the parts that are in focus, then that matters, obviously. So I suggest looking through the camera, focus on the closest or the furthest, it doesn't matter, whichever way you're going to shoot the stack, and then leave it alone. Leave it alone from there. If you want, use your autofocus system. Get the front of the bug in focus and then turn it to manual and don't touch it. And yeah, so it doesn't really matter, but just to be sure that you're going to get everything in focus, that's the way you would do it. All right. Dave Hodgson says he loves the idea of the book on COVID. I do too. I'm so excited about it, and it was just an idea a few days ago, but now as I'm starting to get, I can't show you these pictures because they're entries, and you'll see them at the voting time. But I so want to show you some of these pictures because they brought tears to my eyes. Just fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate the word. Let me see. I don't know what time we need to wrap this up, but I'll just answer whatever questions we have remaining, and I'll try to do it quickly. Covered that. Oh, Gene, thank you. Focus shift. That's what the Nikon system is called, focus shift shooting. Have you ever tried fiberglass to eat? Fiberglass for the light. Not sure what you mean, Patrick. Yeah, if you could clarify. I'm trying to think what you might mean. Have you ever saying I will we covered that. We covered. All right. This is impressive. I think we really have covered almost everything that came in. Oh, Barry says, if I'm photographing a bug using speed lights that require, say, a 30 stack shot, I struggle to obtain a test shot that provides a good guide. If I'm running into problems, say in the center of the image, like in mid stack, then I will take a test shot there. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. But if you're having issues with the middle of the stack, say picking up highlights, zoom your rail to where you're halfway through the insect and do some test shots there to make sure the light's good at that of the advance of the rail. I would still go back to the beginning of the insect and manually focus before starting the stack, though. And I strongly recommend having a flashlight, a powerful LED in your macro toolkit for when you're, especially if you're using those diffusion tubes that I use over microscope objectives, so that you've got good light when you're setting the camera's focus before the stack. Oh, Pete already answered Barry's question. Great. Robin Windsor, hi Alan, love your videos. Why is it better to move the camera than the subject? Obviously, it's not any different. I mean, that you're determining your focus by the distance between your sensor and the subject. So you could move the insect instead of the camera. The difficulty is that most people don't have a solid, stable micrometer table. They make these adjustment tables that they use in optical labs and in other engineering things, where you can move these heavy metal tables tiny fractions of a millimeter in 1, 2, or even 3 directions, or 4 directions. Some of them will even rotate. So to do focus stacking, you would need to position your specimen on a rail like that and then move it incrementally. Most people who are serious about macro, after a while, will buy a focusing rail because it takes a lot of the tedium out of doing it. And I have never heard of I guess you could build an automatic micrometer table focus rail. I don't know how you do it, but you could. The other issue is that I try not to even breathe on my specimen when I'm shooting a focus stack, because any movement at all will ruin the stack. You can't move it back. Once a wing goes like that, you're done for. And anything that involves moving the subject 100 times is going to end up messing up. So I'm going to end up jiggling it or knocking it at some point, whereas that's not going to happen if my focus is all just on the camera and lens. That's why I do it. I think it's why most other people do it. You guys are giving good answers to a lot of your questions. This is wonderful. Ronald is talking to. I've had it for so long, I can't remember what I paid for it, but yeah, I'll have to look that up. I didn't think it was anything close to 200. Thoughts on free stacking software like Picolay? There are multiple programs out there that are free. The problem is most of them don't offer any useful one in particular, but I'll look it up and see what it can do. But hey, if that's the extent of what you can afford to spend on one, by all means, get it and try it. You can always move up later. All right. Oh, Michael Gabes, I hope that is. He just bought Helicon and wants to know if Zerine is so much better. There may have been a time in the past where I would have said yes. But at that time, I used Helicon for a short period of time, and I think it was several releases before where they are now. I'm talking about right when Zerine first came out. And my initial impression was so overwhelmingly positive for Zerine that I just that became hardwired into my brain. Also, the fact that I really like the guy who makes Zerine, the guy who coded it, and Rick Littlefield is his name, and he's such a fine, upstanding guy. He's very active in the macro community, and he's very helpful. I had a couple of problems with the Mac interface, and he was able to help me fix it all. So the short version of the answer is no. As good as Zerine is, I don't think it is that much better than Helicon. I have got my hands on a copy recently and did a side-by-side comparison. And there's not a lot in it. They're both absolutely fantastic programs. And Helicon has a couple of features that that Xerine doesn't. At the time when I've made comments about Helicon not being as good, it was because I didn't think Helicon had an interface with Lightroom like Xerine does, but apparently it does. So I would say no. If you bought Helicon, you bought one of the two best focus stacking programs in the universe. So you should be happy. David wants to hear about the alien abduction, and well, it never happened. I wondered if anybody was going to ask about that. Then thought we'd have to get into all the probing stuff. All right, guys. Well, let me see. Oh, hang on. We got one more. Marcelo from New York. You bought a Model 2 focusing Bellows. Oh yeah, this is a great question. Marcelo bought a focusing Bellows, but could not attach his camera to the Bellows because the camera struck the support bar that the Bellows sits on as he was trying to put it on. That will happen if you're using a PB6 Bellows as well, the one I use, this one. And there, if I try to get that down, I'll drop it. But there is a trick to putting it on. There is a silver button on, it's right there. That silver button, if you depress it, you can rotate the entire collar that the camera goes onto. If I try to put on that, especially my D50, it will not fit. But if I rotate that collar by pressing that silver button, then I can put my camera on and it'll rotate back without hitting anything. So yeah, it is a problem. But worst case scenario, buy a short extension tube that has your camera's mount on it and just put the extension tube backwards on the back of the Bellows and attach your camera to it. That could give you 8, 10, 15 millimeters of clearance. It would just add to the length of your Bellows. But that would be the other way around it. If you can't fit it on just by swinging the thingamajig. Marcin B wants to know, well, thank you for the kind words about the photographs. Could you tell me, is the microscope lens a good idea for macro? Yes, it is. If you're going to be shooting anything above 3 or 4x magnification, the problem is if you're shooting with a lens, by the time you get to, we talked about this at the beginning of this session, but let's say you're using a nice prime lens at f8 and you've got it on a long extension tube or a long Bellows that is, you're trying to get, say, 4x magnification out of it. That shooting at f8, if you're shooting at 4 times magnification, that is the equivalent of shooting at f40. And if you shoot at f40, you are going to have problems with diffraction softening. So that's why if you're going for more than 3x magnification, actually, I think if you're going for more than 2x magnification, use a microscope objective because it will allow you to avoid having these really, really massive F numbers with a lens that's going to result in bad diffraction. So I hope that helps, Marcin. Pete McQuaid reminds me that Affinity Photo has good focus stacking. We've been round and around on this. I think that it certainly has a very capable focus stacking program, much like Photoshop does, but it focus stacking, unless I'm focus stacking a landscape with 3 images. But 150 image stack Photoshop will just pack up and leave your computer and won't come home. All righty. Noah Peters asks, what kind of magnifications is the Amscope 4X microscope lens good for? 4X. It is designed so that the image projected at 160 millimeters, the tube length, will be a 4 times magnification. You can't adjust that if you circle either behind or in front of the focal plane, and you'll end up with nothing but blur. So it literally is, when you're using microscope objectives, the magnification is what is stamped on the box. Not true for infinity corrected. There are incremental changes that you can increase or decrease magnification with infinity corrected lenses, like the one I was talking about earlier, the CFI 10X by Nikon. By changing the length of your tube lens, you can use that at 5X or at 10X. So it gets complicated, I know, but do I use microscope objectives in the field? Not much, to be honest. Not much. One of the big problems with microscope objectives, especially at higher magnifications, it is very hard to frame the picture. You're also working with working distances of a few millimeters. And out in the field, most things will fly away by the time this big metal tube is 2 millimeters from them. So I really don't. Lighting is difficult. To use microscope objectives, I need complete control of the environment. I need to be able to control every aspect of it, the light, camera position. So generally speaking, I don't. I know a lot of people who do and get great results, but they usually also lug around a tripod, which that's not my idea of macro in the woods. I'm on my knees most of the time. All right. Mike says that he uses Infinity 2, but doesn't feel like it's anywhere up to Helicon. Fair enough. Another vote. All right. I'll tell you what, I think we're just about done. Could you do some kind of episode looking at your photos and giving advice? Person number 10 to ask me to do this. I've never mentioned this before, but I spend probably 6 to 8 hours a week reviewing photographs with people who send them to me. From you guys will send a photograph or a few photographs and ask for input on editing or on the framing of the photograph or the lighting or whatever. And I respond to every single one of those requests by going through those photographs with you, because I'm honored that you would ask me to do that. But with so many people asking to do that, I keep finding images and questions that I think would be perfect for everybody else to look at too. Like, if I'm going to answer this complex lighting question, let me answer it for everybody so that you all get the benefit of that of that same discussion. So that's what I'm going to start doing. I've got a what do you call it? What do you call that thing that you email people with? An email address. It's my contact at Allan Wall's Photography email, but put in the subject line review. Just put review in the subject line, and any email that comes to me with an attached photograph with review on it, I'll put them aside. And then when I get enough photographs, I will record a video where I critique the photograph or help you edit the photograph or whatever it is that you ask. If you just say, look at this and tell me what I did wrong, that's what we'll do. I'll show the photograph to everybody and I'll point out what I would have done differently or whatever. And in Gene's case, where it's an editing issue, I'll walk you through the entire workflow. Send just like you do now, only write review. If you send me pictures and privately through the email, and you do not want me to do them publicly on a video, please say so that I won't miss it. Like, first thing, you want to talk to me privately about this, you don't want me to show it, and I will honor that, obviously. Have you found a way that we can send images without clogging up your email? From Pete. No, I haven't. I discovered the web the thing that I use is Squarespace. That's the name of it. Squarespace. It's very nice, but it doesn't allow file transfer. So I can't get photographs sent directly uploaded to my site. I thought about doing it using Dropbox, but the issue with that is that in order for you to upload a file, it would mean everybody uploading a file would also have permission to edit whatever's in that file. And that just doesn't seem right to me, that you haven't given permission for anybody else to edit your photographs. So I can't, if some of you boffins out there know how this could be done in a way that won't drive me insane, then I'll be happy to do it. But for now, do photographs, and please just send them in by email for now till I figure something else out. All right. Them all, but they all have exactly the same issue with permissions. The permission it takes for you to upload a file also is the position that would give you access to delete other people's files. I know that nobody on this would do that, obviously, but it still just doesn't seem like, from a security standpoint, a very good idea. Or a place you could take them and put them in a page where we can just look at them. Pete, that's a brilliant idea that has not occurred to me. Pete McQuaid is suggesting that we have a shared folder somewhere where anybody who wants to can contribute an image to it, and it's for the enjoyment of all of you guys, so you could all access it. Let me look into that. It would be a matter of finding the right way to host it. I could work around that by creating a gallery on my website where if you email me the photographs, I will take them unaltered and put them in a gallery, a viewer's gallery. How would that work, Pete? You think that would work? I think we'll give that a try. I'll actually set that up on the website and let you know when it's done. If you don't want a photograph put there, then when you send me a photograph, please be clear, because otherwise I will assume that anything you send me, it's okay for me to put on this gallery. Okay, good. Well, I'm gonna. Hang on a sec. There is one other thing I want to talk about here. Marcin, how about hashtags on Instagram? I don't know what they are. Yeah, Marcin, I really don't know what that would mean. I know what a hashtag is. No, I really don't. I've heard my children talk about hashtags. I thought it was something to do with clothes or food, but yeah, if somebody can tell me how hashtags and Instagram would be a way for us to share photos, then yeah, I'm up for trying anything. Mr. Ball Pythons saying hi from Dublin. Greetings. And a lot of folks are agreeing with Pete's suggestion, so we definitely will do this. Odd feeling as it is to have a lively chat with myself. I'm glad nobody came to the door, which is right there. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this. Got lots and lots of good stuff coming up. And one last thing before I go. Please, 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 if you know how to do hashtags and things like that, try to get the word out to just anybody. I mean, I really wish I knew more about social media, but I think all we need is for one recognized big name photographer to pick up this idea and say, yeah, that's a worthwhile cause, and get behind it. Could make all the difference in the world. And Twitter tweets and Instagram things, but yeah, they go to my 3 friends who already know about the program. Anyway, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I was terrified that it would just be me making up questions. But yeah, this was fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we will definitely do it again. By the time I do it again, I will come up with a better audio video solution. Though at least here, the video doesn't look much different than it does with my camera. But thank you all. I really, really appreciate you. You're the best. Take care. I'll put this up later. Cheerio.